When the transport ship touched down on the dusty ground of the human frontier colony, Lyra stood completely still, clutching the small travel pack she had carried since childhood. Her heart pounded because she knew she was not supposed to be there. Her older sister, Saren, was the one promised as a bride in the old agreement between their people and the humans who lived far away beyond the trade lanes. But Saren had fallen sick, unable to walk or stand without trembling, and their family had panicked. The humans had sent for the bride, and the agreement had to be honored. Lyra, younger but healthy, had stepped forward. She had not told the humans the truth. She had not even told her sister until the final moment. She had just said she would go. Someone had to. Their family needed peace with the human colony, and their sick sister needed protection. Lyra had grown up, shy, gentle, always feeling unnoticed next to her strong and confident sister. But now she was stepping into her place with silent courage. She took a long breath as the ship doors opened. Warm air from the colony washed against her skin. She saw soldiers lined up in disciplined rows. Humans all tall, straight-backed, wearing white uniforms with silver plates. They looked serious, strong, trained. She had heard stories that human warriors were fierce when threatened yet honorable. Still, she felt small, walking toward them. Her species had markings of soft, glowing patterns on their skin that brightened during emotion, and she felt embarrassed when the marks along her cheeks began faintly shining. She lowered her head, hoping no one noticed. The soldiers did notice. Some exchanged surprised glances, whispering to each other. Lyra wasn't what they expected. The original bride, her sister Saren, was known for her beauty and sharp voice, while Lyra was quieter, gentler, and had softer features. But Lyra kept walking, each step steady even though her heart wanted to run back into the ship. At the center of the soldiers stood a single man, tall, broad shoulders, dark hair cut short, and eyes that watched everything like they carried years of responsibility. Commander Hayes. The humans respected him deeply. He was the man chosen to greet the bride and decide if their alliance would stand strong. He was also the man rumored to choose the bride personally and bring her into the heart of the colony. Lyra lifted her gaze for only a moment, and their eyes met. She froze. His eyes were shockingly clear, like the sky after rain. He did not speak at first, he only studied her with focus that made her pulse jump. Commander Hayes did not look like a man who believed in promises made by others, yet he also looked like someone who followed duty. When he saw Lyra approaching, he noticed the nervous glow on her skin, the gentle way she clutched her pack, the quiet steps. Something about her made him straighten. This was not the woman they were told about. This was someone else. She was smaller, softer, almost frightened, but still walking forward with determination. That alone caught his interest. He did not usually react to strangers, but this time he did. Lyra bowed slightly, as was polite in her culture. Her voice shook as she spoke. I greet you, Commander Hayes of the human colony." She hoped her words were clear. The commander stepped closer. "You are Lyra, correct?" he asked. His voice steady but surprisingly gentle. She nodded. Hayes looked at her for a silent moment, almost too long, and his soldiers waited quietly behind him. No one moved. Lyra felt the pressure of his gaze and lowered her head again. She thought she had failed. She thought he could already sense she was not Saren. She waited for him to demand answers. Instead, he spoke softly. "You may lift your head." She obeyed, confused and trembling. Commander Hayes studied her carefully. Something inside him shifted. Not only was she not what he expected, she was far more than he expected. Her eyes were large and clear, her expressions honest, her presence peaceful. She had a simple, unspoken strength, and her glowing markings, soft, faint lights on her cheeks told him she was scared but still brave. He respected that instantly. Hayes finally gave the smallest nod. "Welcome to Horizon Colony." Lyra exhaled, though her heart still hammered. She had rehearsed many polite answers, but she could say none of them now. She simply whispered, "Thank you." The commander extended his hand to guide her off the landing platform. She hesitated. Only a moment touch between their species was rare, meaningful, but refusing might seem rude. So she placed her small hand in his large one. His grip was warm and steady, and for a moment she felt like the ground stopped shaking beneath her. Hayes noticed how light her hand felt, how nervous she was, and somehow he tightened his hold just a little, guiding her down slowly so she would not stumble. Lyra walked beside him, unsure why her chest felt warm. As they moved, people in the colony watched with curiosity. They whispered as the new bride passed by. Many expected a bold, fierce woman. Instead, they saw someone gentle, almost timid. Some doubted she could fit in this harsh frontier world, but others sensed something special about her presence. Commander Hayes felt all those eyes too. He slowed his pace slightly, placing himself subtly between her and the staring crowds, shielding her without making it obvious. Soldiers noticed and exchanged looks. No commander had done that before, not even for the previous bride candidates from other colonies. Lyra kept her eyes down, feeling every step. She tried to calm her racing heart by reminding herself why she was here. Her sister was sick. Their people needed peace, and she must do her best. She could not let anyone see her fear. She repeated that over and over. As they reached the base building, Hayes opened the door for her. She stepped inside, and the cool air touched her skin. A medical officer approached to run a health check. But when he saw her nervous, glowing patterns intensify, he paused. "Commander, perhaps she needs rest first." Hayes glanced at Lyra. Her glowing marks were brighter now, showing distress. "She rests first," he said simply. He turned to her and spoke softly. "I'll take you to your quarters. You don't need to rush anything today." Lyra felt gratitude rise in her chest. She nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Commander Hayes personally led her to the guest quarters reserved for the bride. When she stepped inside, she felt overwhelmed. The room was simple but warm, with soft lights and a place to sit, a place to sleep, and even a window looking out over the colony. She had never slept in such a place before. She hugged her arms around herself. "You can call for anything you need," Hayes said, standing near the door. Lyra turned slowly. Her voice was small. "Thank you, Commander. I hope I can fulfill the agreement between our people." He looked at her for a long moment. "Agreements matter," he said, "but so does honesty." His gaze softened. "We will talk tomorrow. Rest now." She nodded again. When he left, she leaned against the door and closed her eyes. She had survived the first meeting, but she also knew Hayes had sensed something unusual. He had looked at her like he saw more than she wanted anyone to see. She walked toward the window and looked outside. The human colony spread wide, filled with people who were now part of her future. She wondered if she could carry the truth alone. What if they discovered she was not the intended bride? What if she failed? But then she remembered the commander's steady eyes, the gentle way he guided her, the way he stood between her and the crowd. Maybe he would understand. Down in the courtyard, Commander Hayes stood looking up at her window. He did not know why he felt drawn to her, or why he sensed the quiet strength inside her. But he knew one thing clearly. When he saw her step off the ship, something in him had chosen her immediately. And he didn't know it yet, but Lyra had already changed the path of his colony and his heart. That night, Lyra barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she remembered the moment when Commander Hayes looked at her, the calm strength in his eyes, the protective way he moved. She had expected a strict, cold leader, someone who cared only about rules and agreements. Instead, She had found a man who noticed the smallest details in her fear and tried to ease them without saying much. That small kindness had stayed with her, warming her chest long after he had left her room. Still, fear rose again and again. She whispered into the dark room. What have I done? She had taken her sister's place. Would the humans be angry if they found out? Would the commander feel betrayed? The glowing markings on her skin brightened with worry. She pulled the blanket over herself, hoping the light would fade. Outside her window, the colony was quiet. A few guards walked the perimeter wall. Machines hummed in the distance, and the wind carried the sound of something metallic swaying. Lyra pressed her forehead to the glass and watched the sky turn slowly from night to early morning gray. She finally slept for a few minutes before sunrise. When she awoke, someone knocked gently at her door. She sat up fast, heart pounding. For a moment she thought the commander had discovered the truth, but the soft knock came again, no urgency, no anger. Lyra stood, straightened her clothes, and opened the door slightly. Commander Hayes stood there. Her breath caught. She quickly lowered her gaze, unsure how to greet him. "You slept?" Hayes asked. His tone was not demanding, more like he honestly hoped she had rested. "Yes," she whispered, even though she barely had. Hayes nodded once. "Good. Today, I'll show you the colony. You should know. The place you will live." She blinked in surprise. "You will show me yourself?" "Of course," he said simply. "It is my responsibility. And..." He paused for a brief moment. "I want to understand you better." Her cheeks warmed as her faint glow brightened again. Hayes noticed, but did not comment. Instead, he stepped aside and let her step out of the room. When she walked past him, the light from her markings brushed across his chest like dim stars. For some reason, the sight made Hayes slow his breathing. She looked delicate, but something told him she carried more courage than she showed. They walked down the hallway together. Lyra stayed close, but careful, unsure how much distance was respectful. Hayes matched his steps with hers, so she wouldn't feel rushed. As they exited into the sunlight, Lyra shielded her eyes. The colony looked different, now alive. Bright, filled with movement. Machines rolled along tracks, workers carried crates, engineers repaired panels on the outer walls. People paused when they saw the commander walking beside the alien bride. Some looked curious. Some looked surprised. Some looked almost impressed. Hayes noticed Lyra's shoulders tighten. Without a word, he moved slightly closer again, standing just enough in front to block some of the staring eyes. Lyra felt the shift and looked up at him briefly. She didn't speak, but she understood. She was being protected, not because of an agreement but because he cared that she felt safe. They walked further until they reached a tall structure made of steel and glass. "This is our central tower," Hayes explained. "You will see the entire colony from the top." Lyra hesitated. "Is it safe?" He gave a small smile. "You will be with me." "So yes." Her markings glowed nervously, but she nodded. They took a lift to the top floor. When the doors opened, Lyra gasped softly. The world stretched far beyond anything she imagined. The vast blue sky touched the mountains at the horizon. The colony below looked small, almost gentle from this height. Hayes watched her reaction, almost forgetting to breathe. She looked like light itself. Soft, peaceful, amazed. "You see," he said softly. "This is why we live here. A hard world, but beautiful." "It is beautiful," she agreed, her voice full of quiet wonder. "Your world, it feels open. My home has many trees and tall buildings. Here, I can see everything. And everything can see you," Hayes added before he realized he said it out loud. She turned to him slowly. "Is that bad?" "No," he said instantly. "Not bad. Just new." He wasn't sure how to explain the strange feeling inside him when he looked at her like she belonged here, even though she had just arrived. Lyra walked to the window and placed her hand gently against the glass. "Commander, why do your people want a bride from my world?" He folded his arms loosely. "It began with trade, then peace agreements. Our worlds are very different. Having a bride join the colony was meant to be a symbol of unity." "So it is political," she whispered. "Yes, at first," Hayes said. "But I choose who I accept into my colony. I don't simply follow orders." His voice lowered, firm, but calm. "When I saw you, something told me you were the right one." Lyra felt her heart jump sharply. She dropped her hand from the window and stepped back, overwhelmed. "But you did not know me," she said softly. "I know enough," Hayes replied. "You walked forward even while afraid. That tells me your character." She didn't know how to respond. No one had ever said such words to her. Her family loved her, yes, but they always believed Saren was the strong one, the beautiful one, the one who deserved attention. Lyra was the quiet shadow behind her. To hear the commander notice her courage shook her deeply. She tried to change the subject before emotion overtook her. "Commander, what is your role exactly? What do you protect?" He looked out the window. "Everything," he said simply. "My people. This colony. The future. I take responsibility for everyone's safety." His words carried weight, real weight. Lyra sensed the loneliness behind them, the pressure he lived with every day. She felt sympathy rise in her chest. "Do you ever rest?" she asked softly. Hayes turned to her slowly, almost surprised by the question. "Not often." "You should," she murmured. "Even strong people need rest." For a moment, he didn't know what to say. No one had spoken to him like that in years, gently, without expectations, without fear. He found himself staring at her a little too long. Lyra noticed and looked away shyly. They left the tower and continued their walk. Hayes showed her the training grounds, the research labs, the gardens grown inside glass domes. Lyra stopped to look at every flower, every creature, every little detail. Her gentle curiosity made soldiers and workers smile more than they expected. When they reached the outer wall, Lyra paused. "Commander, your world has dangers." "Yes," Hayes answered. "That is why we train every day." She touched the wall lightly. The stone was warm under the sun. "I want to help," she said softly. "You already help," he replied. "I mean, more. I don't want to be a burden. My people sent a bride to bring peace, not to stay locked away." Hayes faced her. "You are not a burden, and you will never be locked away. You may learn, train, walk freely, anything you choose." Her markings glowed warmly, touched by his trust. But the warmth ended when a voice behind them shouted, "Commander!" A soldier ran toward them, breathing hard. Hayes straightened instantly, all softness replaced by alert focus. "What happened?" "Suspicious activity near the perimeter," the soldier reported. "Unidentified movement. Could be animals, but the patterns look unusual." Hayes nodded. "Prepare a scouting team." "Yes, sir." As the soldier ran back, Hayes turned to Lyra. She looked worried. "You must return to your quarters," he said gently. "It may be nothing, but I won't risk your safety." She shook her head. "I can walk with you." "No," he said softly but firmly. "I will not bring you into danger." Her throat tightened. Not because he denied her request, but because she saw genuine worry in his eyes. "You will be careful?" she asked. "Yes," he promised. "Always." She wanted to say more, but he was already stepping away. Her heart fluttered at the sound of her name on his lips. "You belong here," he said. Then he left to lead the scouting team. Lyra returned to her quarters, but she couldn't calm her thoughts. Something about the unusual movement outside the colony made her uneasy. She sat near the window, waiting, watching the walls in the distance. Hours passed. Soldiers returned here and there, but not the commander. As the sun began to set, the door suddenly opened. Lyra stood quickly, fear rising. But it was Hayes. His uniform was dusty, his hair slightly out of place, but he was unharmed. She stepped forward without thinking. "You're safe," she whispered. "I told you I would be," he replied. And there was something in his voice, something warm, something that felt like a connection forming. He stepped closer, slow and calm. "Lyra, there is something I must ask." She swallowed softly. "What is it? When you arrived, were you afraid? Because of the journey? Or because something else troubles you?" Her markings glowed bright. Her chest tightened. He had seen through her again. She looked down, unable to hold his eyes. "Commander, I came in my sister's place." Hayes froze. Lyra squeezed her hands together. She fell sick. "My family. They needed peace. I wasn't chosen. I wasn't prepared. But I came because someone had to." She waited for anger, for disappointment. Instead, Hayes stepped forward, slow and careful, as if approaching someone fragile. She blinked, surprised by his tone. "Yes. You were afraid I would reject you." "Yes," she whispered. Hayes exhaled, a deep and steady breath. Then he said the words she never expected. "Lyra, I chose you the moment you stepped off that ship. Not because of agreements, not because of promises, but because of who you are. Your courage, your honesty, your kindness." His voice lowered. "Not your sister. You." End quote. Her eyes filled with quiet emotion. She had never felt seen like this. "You are not the wrong bride," he said firmly. Lyra's glowing markings softened into gentle light, spreading across her cheeks like dawn. For the first time since she arrived, she felt truly safe. And neither of them knew it yet. But the danger outside the colony had only just begun. The next morning came with a strange, heavy silence around the colony. Lyra felt it the moment she woke up. The air felt too still, too tense, like everyone was holding their breath. She dressed quickly and stepped out of her room, expecting to see guards walking normally, workers talking, machines buzzing. But instead she saw soldiers moving with sharp purpose, scanning the surroundings carefully. Their faces looked serious, even troubled. Something was wrong. Lyra's heart began to beat faster. She hurried toward the main hall, hoping to find Commander Hayes. People watched her with mixed expressions. Some respectful, some curious, some worried. She knew she was still new to them, still unfamiliar, but today their eyes carried something else. Fear. When she reached the entrance of the command center, 2 guards stepped in front of her. "Commander Hayes is in a meeting," one said firmly. "Please stay in your quarters." Lyra clasped her hands nervously. "Is he safe?" "Yes, but he is busy," the guard replied. She wanted to insist, but she also knew arguing would bring nothing. She bowed politely and turned away. Still, she couldn't return to her room. Her chest felt heavy. Something inside her whispered that whatever danger the soldiers found yesterday had not disappeared. It had grown. She walked toward the outer walkway, where she could see the distant hills. The sun was rising slowly, painting the mountains with pale gold. Normally the sight would calm her. Today, it only reminded her how small she was in this new world. As she stood there, a shadow approached behind her. He looked tired, as if he had barely slept. His uniform was slightly wrinkled, and his eyes carried a seriousness she had not seen before. But the moment he saw her, some of that hardness melted. Lyra felt relief wash over her. "Commander," she whispered, "you should be resting," he said gently, coming to stand beside her. "I couldn't," she admitted. I felt something was wrong. Hayes nodded slowly. There is something. More than we expected. Lyra stared up at him. What did you find yesterday? He looked out toward the hills. Tracks, movement, signs of something watching the colony. But it wasn't animals. It was too organized. Lyra felt a chill run through her skin. Another species? No, Hayes said. Humans. She gasped softly. That answer shocked her. More than anything else could have. There are human raiders out there, he continued. Groups that do not follow any colony or law. They take what they want. They have attacked smaller settlements before. And now they are near here? She asked. Yes. Lyra felt her hands tremble slightly. Will they attack? They might, Hayes replied. Or they might wait for weakness. She swallowed. I don't want to be a weakness, she said quietly. Hayes turned to her quickly. You are not a weakness. You are the reason I am strengthening the defenses today. Lyra lowered her gaze. I just arrived, and already trouble came. Trouble was already here, Hayes said. You had nothing to do with it. She looked up again, and Hayes gave a faint, reassuring smile. And Lyra, you did nothing wrong. By taking your sister's place. When I said you are the right choice, I meant it. Those words wrapped around her like warmth, steady and comforting. She nodded softly, feeling her heart steady again. But the peace lasted only for a moment. A sudden alarm rang through the colony, loud, sharp, echoing off the metal walls. Lyra jumped. Hayes's expression hardened instantly. He turned toward the main yard. Stay here, he ordered, gently but firmly. Commander, I'll come back, he promised. Then he ran, and Lyra watched him disappear into the crowd of soldiers rushing to their posts. The alarms fell silent, replaced by shouting voices and hurried footsteps. Lyra walked quickly along the walkway, trying to see what was happening. From the edge of the wall she could see dust rising in the distance, small figures, moving fast. Raiders. Her heart tightened painfully. She wished she could help. She wished she could be useful. Staying hidden in a room felt wrong, especially when the man who had shown her nothing but kindness was out there facing danger. Without thinking, she followed a group of workers heading toward the interior of the colony. She nodded but kept her pace slow until she slipped away down another hallway. She had no weapon, no training, nothing to offer, except her eyes and her instincts. But she couldn't sit and wait, not when Hayes might be in danger. She climbed the stairs to the observation deck. From there, she had a clear view of the outer wall. Soldiers lined up in defensive positions. Hayes stood at the front, calm and commanding, giving orders with steady hands. Lyra pressed her hands against the railing, her glowing markings dim and trembling. She wished she could shout encouragement to him, but the distance was too great. The raiders approached closer, their figures becoming clearer. They carried weapons, wore mismatched armor, and rode fast vehicles over the dirt. They were a chaotic force compared to the disciplined soldiers of the colony. Hayes raised a hand. Hold position! His voice echoed across the walls. The raiders slowed, forming a loose circle. Then one of them stepped forward, lifting a white cloth as if pretending to negotiate. Hayes narrowed his eyes. The man screamed something inaudible from the distance. Lyra felt her breath stop. Then the raider lowered the white cloth, dropped it, and raised his weapon. A trap. The battle began instantly. Shots rang out. Dust exploded upward. Soldiers defended the walls with calm precision. Raiders charged forward recklessly, firing wildly. Lyra watched with her heart in her throat. She could not look away from Hayes as he commanded the line, shouting orders, adjusting formations, and moving with fierce awareness. The raiders reached the lower gates. A loud crash shook the ground. Lyra gasped. Commander. Soldiers activated the defense shields. Sparks burst as projectiles struck the invisible barrier. For a moment, the shields held. But the raiders were prepared. They threw metal devices that pulsed with electricity. The shields flickered. Hayes shouted something urgently, and soldiers ran to reinforce the generators. Lyra felt tears build at the corners of her eyes. She didn't want to lose him. She didn't want him to get hurt because of her arrival. She held onto the railing so tightly her fingers turned pale. Then she saw something that made her blood freeze. A group of raiders had broken away from the main fight. They were sneaking around the far south wall, carrying large equipment, heavy tools meant for cutting metal. They were going to breach the wall. Lyra looked around frantically. No one else saw them. The soldiers were focused on the main attack. She couldn't shout from here. No one would hear through the noise. She couldn't run to Hayes. She would never reach him in time. But she could do something else. She turned and ran. Her steps were light but fast as she moved down the stairs, through the halls, past startled workers. She followed the south corridor until she reached a small maintenance door she had seen earlier during her tour. It led to the outside walkway near the south wall. She shoved the door open and stepped outside. The air smelled like smoke and dust. The sounds of battle rattled through her bones. She looked down from the walkway and saw the raiders approaching the wall, preparing their tools. Lyra knew she couldn't fight, but she could warn the soldiers. She took a deep breath and climbed onto the railing. Then she shouted, her voice echoing across the battlefield. "Commander Hayes, South Wall, Raiders." Her glowing markings blazed bright gold with fear and urgency, shining like a beacon. Hayes heard her. Even in the chaos, her voice cut through the noise. He snapped his head toward the south wall and saw her small figure standing there, glowing like a signal flare. He followed her pointing arm, and his eyes widened. He shouted instantly to his second-in-command. "South team, move now, secure the breach." Soldiers dashed toward the south wall. Hayes looked again at Lyra. She was still standing on the railing. Too exposed. Too vulnerable. "Get down," he shouted. But she couldn't hear him over the battle. A loud crack snapped in the air. A raider had seen her. He aimed his weapon. Hayes' heart slammed painfully. "Lyra!" She saw the weapon pointed at her. She froze. A shot fired, but Hayes reached the railing beneath her in one impossible burst of speed. He grabbed her waist, pulled her down behind the metal cover, and shielded her with his body as the projectile smashed into the wall and exploded harmlessly above them. Lyra trembled beneath him, her breath shaking. "Are you hurt?" Hayes demanded, voice rough with worry. "No. No," she whispered. He held her arms firmly, checking for injuries. His hands were warm, trembling just slightly from the rush of fear. Lyra looked up at him, her markings glowing faintly. "I had to warn you," she said softly. They were going to break the wall. Hayes stared at her, shock mixed with something deeper, something fierce and protective. "I couldn't stay safe while you were in danger," she whispered. His breath caught. For a moment, the battle sounds seemed distant, muted. Then he said the words that changed everything. "You are not just a symbol or a bride from an agreement," Hayes said quietly. "You matter to me." Lyra felt her heart flutter. Before she could answer, a soldier shouted, "Commander, South Wall secured. The raiders are retreating." Hayes turned, confirming the raiders were fleeing into the distance. The colony had defended itself successfully. He let out a slow breath and looked back at Lyra. She looked small in his arms, dust on her skin, her markings glowing softly like warm embers, but her courage had saved them all. Hayes brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You were brave," he said. "Reckless, but brave." She gave a small, shy smile. "I only did what I could." Hayes stood, then helped her up gently, keeping a hand on her back to steady her. The soldiers around them bowed their heads respectfully toward Lyra. One soldier said, "Commander, your bride saved the colony." Lyra's cheeks glowed brightly, embarrassed and overwhelmed. Hayes placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "She is part of us," he said with quiet pride. Lyra felt warmth spread through her chest. For the first time since she arrived, she did not feel like an outsider. She felt like she belonged. Hayes leaned closer and whispered so only she could hear. "I choose you, again, and again." Her markings shimmered like gentle light, and though the danger had passed, something new had begun. The bond between them, unplanned, unexpected, but real, was stronger than any agreement between their worlds. Together, they would face whatever future came next.